This is Chip Maxwell, and you're listening to the Retire Smart Podcast with David Brooks. Today, David and Chip share some heartwarming moments from the recent Night at Memorial event, highlighting the character and generosity of several Husker players. Then the conversation shifts to a new tax policy torpedo that could hit high-income earners hard, especially in blue states, along with smart strategies to avoid the hit. Plus, a look at CNBC's top states for quality of life and business, and the latest debate on inflation, interest rates, and tariffs. David, before we get to the news, a chaser on our Night at Memorial, the Memorial Stadium event. I know we talked about this before, but I found out that there was a grandmother there who was so excited. I'm on the field. I'm at Memorial Stadium. She FaceTimed her grandson. He was at his cousin's birthday party, and she said, "Can you see? I'm on the stadium." "Oh, that's cool, Grandma. Yeah. Would you like to meet some Huskers?" "What?" And she swings her phone around. Shannon's got the B-roll playing behind us there for those watching on YouTube. And there's Caleb Benning, Emmett Johnson, Luke Lindemeyer, Connor Booth, and Carter Nelson were the players who joined us. Anyway, we had 5 players who joined us, and they're wishing the cousin a happy birthday. I guess, the kids on the other end of the phone, the kids at the birthday party, they're all gathering around. What? What's this? It was just... I was so impressed. The players really represented the program well. They were
they were
poised,
phenomenal.
They were
all 5 young men were phenomenal. EJ or Emma Johnson, he's like, "Hey, give me your number." So we swapped contact, and we've actually texted a few times back and forth. I am going to invite him to come on the show. I just want to make sure I don't get him in any hot water. But I thought, it'd be fun is we do our picks on the Husker season, but let's get him to pick maybe some stocks. We'll have him come on, and we'll track him along the season and just see how he does, what have you. So he said he might be open to that. So we'll see.
We'll have some Emmett Johnson futures, 1,000 yards rushing, 500 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns maybe. We'll see. Actually, speaking of Emmett Johnson, you just reminded me, we had a client there celebrating his 72nd birthday. So he's got 3 generations of his family there. Now, we had several hundred people, milling around, and the football players are in the midst of him. So the guy was a little sheepish. Well, I don't want to pull him away, but he went up to Emmett Johnson and said, "I'm celebrating my birthday, and there are 13 of us here." Before he could finish the pitch, Emmett says, "Where are they? Let's go!" And he just dives in, and pictures and autographs and things. And the
feedback was phenomenal from the event.
It really was fantastic. All right. Into the news we go, David. Speaking of chasers, here's a chaser on the big, beautiful bill. The headlines from CNBC. Trump's big, beautiful bill could deliver 45.5% SALT torpedo for high earners, Tax Pros says. All right, let's unpack this SALT, of course, state and local taxes, the deduction that I despise on your federal income taxes for what you pay in state and local taxes. But what is this torpedo?
So there's a phase out, and it's an accelerated phase out for those that earn, and it doesn't matter if you're single or married. If your modified adjusted gross income goes over $500,000, so think lawyers, doctors, business owners, etc., the phase out. So right now you can deduct, Chip, instead of $10,000, now it's up to $40,000, and it starts this year. So you don't have to wait till next year. So your property tax, your income tax in the state of Nebraska, you get to deduct all that, your state and local taxes, off of your federal income tax. Now this heavily favors people that live in bluer states, we'll call it, right, that have very high income taxes like New Jersey and California, and also high property taxes, because now they can deduct $40,000 of what they pay to the state government off of their federal income tax, which means now they were getting $10,000, so that $30,000 they're not paying tax on, Chip. Who's paying that bill?
Well, that goes to the rest of us.
All of us, right? Yeah, absolutely.
I don't like this.
And if you don't, so
the
this
fiscally irresponsible states are rewarded.
And
don't worry about it. We're gouging you, but it'll all come off your federal taxes.
By the blue votes, even though they didn't really vote for the bill because of the politics of it. Yeah. This was lobbied very heavily from bluer states. But here's the thing. It's a regressive tax, right? Because you're penalizing the lower income people that do not have state and local income tax of $40,000. So again, it's just anyway. So here's the thing, though. If you happen to be blessed and are a high income earner, I have this problem, all right? If you want to call it a problem, first world problem. But I will not get the best because my income goes past the other side of the threshold. So once you go past $600,000, you're simply capped at the $10,000 deduction we had before. So you don't get any net benefit. But the torpedo that we're talking about, Chip, is if somebody was earning exactly $600,000, a married couple or a single person, instead of the $40,000 deduction that they would have had, once they got to $500,000, it starts to wind its way down to just $10,000. So that extra $100,000, their effective tax rate is 45.5%.
So there's a window in there from 500,000 to 600,000.
Yeah, their effective tax rate would be about 30% below that number, and then it's going to jump. So the point being is, if you can plan your income,
are there strategies you can employ?
Oh, absolutely, we can do this year. But let's just say, like, I literally was talking to a dentist who has a very good practice going and is making around $650,000 a year. But he's working more than he wanted to work. Well, this may incentivize him to close his office one day a week and actually cut his revenue by about 20%, because for that extra $100,000 in revenue or income he's generating, he's having to work 20% more than he wants to. And he would only be giving up a net $55,000 of the $100,000 in income if he only wanted to make $500,000 and do it in 4 days if he could. In other words, you really need to be proactive in planning this out. And who can control their income, Chip? Well, people that can afford good tax professionals and tax planners, things that we can offer, but also entrepreneurs, because they can do what we call shift income. We can push income out, or we can pull it forward to get you into the sweet spot of your tax liability. And the same is true when it comes to doing things like Roth conversions for baby boomers that are already retired. It may change the calculation. So again, doing this stuff is not for the faint of heart. You need to work with qualified people that understand all the ins and outs, especially with the new big, beautiful bill, as it's called. We are sending a video out and getting it recorded in the next week or so to all of our clients, letting them know some, the basic opportunities that are there, both for entrepreneurs and for retirees.
Boy, this is an example of where professional guidance can really help. As you often say, you don't know what you don't know. And so, all right, well, I don't like the policy, but those of you who can benefit from it, I don't begrudge you that, and I don't want people to get torpedoed in a certain window there. So definitely check that out. Take some proactive measures to avoid the torpedo. All right, David, let's stay with CNBC for a moment. You sent around a survey that was published on top states for business. It's got about a dozen different categories. One of them was quality of life. And the headline on the feature on that was, these 10 states are America's best for quality of life in 2025. Well, right there in a three-way tie for 8th place with Virginia, and I forget which other one, is Nebraska. Nebraska, Virginia, and Massachusetts, all tied for 8th. And then it was a very heavily New England list the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think Vermont was number one on the list,
Vermont was a clear number one. New Hampshire was in
Ironically, they finished the list, and then they just published an article this morning on the 10 worst states quality of life, and they ranked Tennessee dead last, which I found ironic.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Is there some regional bias there?
Yeah, and it was. And it was all the southern, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee. They're all on the bottom 10. And so like you said, we went and looked inside. Well, what did they rank this on? The air quality, access to healthcare, including some healthcare you and I don't think are really healthcare. But anyway, so
crime rates, education.
But crime rate is what got Nebraska really ranked well.
Yes.
Our air quality and crime rate we scored very well on. We had very low violent crimes per capita compared to most states, and so that was a good thing. But anyway, it's always nice this time of year. You always seem to get these surveys that come out from various entities. The CNBC does them every year. NerdWallet does several. We try to publish them here when we get them. But we also the CNBC did do the top states for business, and that's the one I want to focus on because we were in the top 15. In fact, we were number 15.
That list was more, that moved more to the Midwest and the South. North Carolina, Texas, Florida, Virginia, and Ohio. There's your top 5. Michigan, Georgia. There's Tennessee at number 8 for overall top state for business. Indiana and Minnesota, that rounds out the top 10. As you said, we were 15th. I think I see Iowa at 24 there, so at least in the top half. So on the broader index, on the broader measure, maybe those were some of the names, some of the states we would expect to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so the top states on the business side are very friendly on the tax standpoint, especially to corporate America, and they have incentives to bring there. But the other thing they're looking for is your employment pool, which we have low unemployment here in Nebraska. Wages are above the mean, and you've got a good quality of life for the employees of the companies that want to set up shop and grow like we've done here. So, but anyway, it's great to get us ranked well in a couple of great surveys.
David, Fox Business headline says inflation accelerated in June as the Fed weighs the impact of tariffs in rate cut timing. Now, I've seen commentary that says, the chickens are coming home to roost now on inflation from these tariffs. And I've seen other commentary that says, hey, everybody slow down. That's not what's happening. What do you see happening?
Well, the irony of all ironies is Jerome Powell used the word transitory on the non-inflation is transitory. Oh, it's coming. Remember the transitory inflation on the other side.
Right.
Almost 3 years ago, we started calling them out, right? Mm-hmm. So if they're data dependent, well, inflation's at 2.7%. And that's the headline, right, on the number of month. But if you look at the 3-run rolling, we're at 2.4, then they should be cutting rates. And if inflation does show up later, as they're telling us with transitory, then they can raise rates if they're, in fact, data dependent. So they are being a little bit of crybabies here and try to run, and they just don't like being told what to do from Trump, who's now trying to put the political pressure and the media pressure on them for doing so. But inflation is not caused by tariffs. Again, they run out economists who are Keynesian and don't understand math or study it. Tariffs actually are deflationary in history longer term. They drive prices down. What creates inflation has always been, always will be, is M2. That's money supply. How much money's floating in the system. And that's the only reason you're going to see inflation is if we start printing money again.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. If you want to learn how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, visit retiresmartpodcast.com. And make sure to subscribe to keep up with new episodes every week. Tom Osborne and teammates are not clients of Retire Smart and were compensated for this sponsorship endorsement as such term is defined under SEC Rule 206 subsection 4-1. For further information about this sponsorship and the compensation details, visit retiresmartnow.com and click on the sponsorships tab. The University of Nebraska and University of Nebraska Athletics, also known as Nebraska Cornhuskers, are not clients of Smart Wealth LLC or Retire Smart LLC. Playfly Sports Properties, on behalf of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, was compensated for this endorsement as such term is defined under SEC Rule 206 subsection 4-1. For further information about this sponsorship and the compensation details, visit retiresmartnow.com and click on the sponsorships tab.